by Mr. Tiong, who is the General Manager for Corporate Innovation and Asset Management, as well at the Keppel District Heating and Cooling System Private Limited under Keppel Infrastructure. The title of his keynote is Sustainable Development Through Energy Transition. Let's welcome Mr. Po.
Good morning. Thanks, Prof. Lee. Can I share a video?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So can you see my slides? I'm trying to share my slides. Just hang on a while. Let me see how to get it. Okay. Okay, can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay, good morning. Thank you for having me at this workshop. Today, I will focus my keynote on 4 points. First, I would like to talk about the key energy trends and my perspective of the landscapes in Southeast Asia in the coming years. 2, opportunities and challenges to accelerate energy transition in Southeast Asia. 3, the importance of collaboration and partnership in order to calibrate the velocity and shift of energy mix. And lastly, humanizing energy transition by supporting and training the population through this transition. First, let me talk about key energy trends and my perspectives of the landscape in Southeast Asia in the coming years. Rapid urbanization and digitalization were already taking place pre-COVID-19. So these have put unprecedented demand for energy and stress on the living environment. On the supply side, we are seeing an increase in renewables adoptions and advancement in clean tech, disruptive business models, and ecosystem partnership. In the past 12 months, we saw bold climate goals, commitments, and policy shifts by governments, as well as mounting expectation on climate actions from investors and communities. There are a lot of impetus and opportunities, and I would envision the energy landscape in upcoming years as the acronyms GREAT. So there will be globalized shift towards using renewables and low carbon fuels. Energy system will also be more globally interconnected. We will see more reliable grid and power system where intermittency issues are substantially resolved with better energy storage and demand response management. Electrification and energy efficiency will have widespread adoption across sectors. And we believe that availability to cost-effective alternative sustainable energy source will be available. And lastly, it will be a technology-led. We'll see more integration of innovative clean tech and low carbon infrastructures. There is really no one green bullet, but rather multiple pathways towards decarbonization. Technology will be a force multiplier. To have a thriving low carbon energy ecosystem, we need all actors in the ecosystem to accelerate towards and capture opportunities brought about by energy transition. Keppel Infrastructure is an integrated energy player with some 20 years experience in the power and gas sector. We own and operate power generation assets, waste to energy facility, large-scale district heating and cooling system, as well as new water and desalination plant. We have also undertaken more than 100 environment sustainability projects in 20 countries. We are very focused on scaling up our unique calling card to contribute meaningfully to energy transition in Singapore and Southeast Asia. Second, I will talk about the opportunities and challenges to accelerate energy transition in Southeast Asia. The population of Southeast Asia will increase to over 740 million by 2035 at the rate of 0.85% per annum. ASEAN's aggregate economy is also one of the fastest growing in the world, with a projected growth of over 5% in the next few years. As a result, Southeast Asia is, in terms of electricity demand, one of the fastest growing regions in the world. Sustainable development is a means to an end, and our end goal ought to be to improve quality of lives and living environment. However, ASEAN currently releases about 1.5 billion tons of CO2 every year, higher than Japan and Germany, which emit 1.3 billion tons and 800 million tons per year. Coal is still a significant source of fuel, and ASEAN is the only region in the world where coal is expected to increase its shares of energy mix. While global demand for coal will remain flat, it is expected to grow 3% per year in ASEAN up to 2040, with close to about 20 gigawatt of new coal-fired generating capacity.
Sorry, Mr.
Okay, sorry for the interruption. Okay, so I was talking about, ASEAN currently releases about 1.5 billion tons of CO2 every year, higher than Japan and Germany, which emits 1.3 billion tons and 800 million tons per year. So coal is still a significant source of fuels, and ASEAN is the only region in the world where coal is expected to increase its shares of the energy mix. So while the global demand for coal will remain flat, it is expected to grow 3% per year in ASEAN up to 2040. So with close to about 20 gigawatt of new coal-fired generating capacity under construction, and we expect more capacity, is at the pre-construction stage. So if this trend continues, coal will account for almost 50% of ASEAN projected 2.4 billion tons of CO2 emission by 2040. So to this end, there are two key strategic thrusts that we are seeing for Singapore energy transition. They are namely the ASEAN power grid and the alternative low carbon fuel like hydrogen. So first, the Asian power grid. ASEAN as a region has a target of integrating 23% renewable energy by 2025. One of the ways of reaching that target is regional interconnection and trades. A major project for regional integration is the ASEAN power grid. This is an alternative to connect the region initially on cross-border bilateral terms, then gradually expanding to sub-regional level, and finally to a totally integrated Southeast Asia power grid system. Second will be an alternative to low carbon fuels like hydrogen. So in June this year, the NCCS released a 111-page report on the study of hydrogen imports and the downstream application for Singapore. Adopting CCUS and low carbon hydrogen is a key thrust under Singapore government's decarbonization plan. There are a few pathways for CCUS, but will require further development to be commercially viable. Low carbon hydrogen is a key technology for Singapore to decarbonize. However, until CCUS is commercially viable, Singapore cannot produce low carbon hydrogen at scale. So a key challenge in scaling up the supply of hydrogen is the high storage and transportation costs. There is at the moment no global consensus on the method or timing of which long-distance transport of hydrogen becomes viable. Immediate measures involve importing renewables energy from ASEAN countries and countries with geographical advantage in producing low or zero carbon renewable energy. That brings me to my third point. I will talk about the importance of collaboration, partnership, and government supports. To enable a long-term successful energy reset story like what was done for the Singapore water story, a new energy system requires high degree of long-term planning, massive capex, and integration. Government needs to calibrate the velocity of energy mix shift. So the key is really to integrate and adopt an end-to-end value chain, to calibrate priorities and trade-offs based on technology readiness versus commercial viabilities over time. Provide visibilities and build consensus on pathways, and forge cross-border and multilateral partnerships. So the aim will be to catalyze innovation and new business models, maximize value creation and risk-adjusted ROI, minimize stranded assets, and displace workforce. Partnership and collaboration are critical, not just within one shore, but beyond. However, to progress on this, there remains a lot of work to be done. Some action items such as development of legal and regulatory framework, market design, and policies. Establish technical standards and codes for new and connected energy systems. Risk sharing and funding be behind common infrastructures. ASEAN has a project to develop multilateral power trades in the region. Several institutions are involved in this project, including the heads of ASEAN power utilities, authorities, and the ASEAN Energy Regulatory Network. All these will facilitate flow of capital, innovation, trades, and business, as well as human capital, which is what I will focus and touch on as my last point. So lastly, I will talk about humanizing the energy transition. The demographics in Southeast Asia is very diverse. The population size ranges from less than 500,000 in Brunei to slightly less than 6 million in Singapore, to more than 100 million in Philippines, and more than 270 million in Indonesia. So in terms of GDP per capita, at close to USD of 57K in Singapore, to about USD 10K in Malaysia, and less than USD 2K in Cambodia and Myanmar. So the top priority is to make sure no parts of our population are left behind because of this transition. We are supporting our workforce through this transition via rising awareness of the global shift towards a green economy, helping the population adapt to the changes in the processes, tools, and technique. It is not an one-off on-off switch, but rather we plan for near, mid to longer-term upscaling and allow for lead time for transition. Lastly, we make new green jobs opportunity accessible. First thing first, we need to believe that every worker can be a green worker. Modern days jobs are technology-driven and knowledge-based. So some of the key skill sets which are transferable across industries are familiar with human-machine interfaces, proficiency in good utility practices and sustainable behaviors, understanding digital concepts and appreciate use of data. Finally, the mindset is the most important. A worker who embraces growth and lifelong learning tends to be more evergreen. Workforce transformation has already started prior to COVID-19. The pandemic has simply accelerated the need to adopt modernization at a much greater scale. To some, energy transition may be viewed as a challenge, but it is also an opportunity to uplift many in our workforce. Technology is also an avenue for us to humanize energy transition because we now connect and leverage one another's experience, capabilities, and knowledge, as well as data. So on this note, I'm very hopeful and cautiously optimistic that energy transition in Southeast Asia will bring about harmony, prosperity, and progress to nations. I wish you a very fruitful workshop ahead. Once again, thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Mr. Bo, for sharing Keppel's vision on how to accelerate the energy transition, as well as sharing the many capabilities and know-how residing within the Keppel family. So with that, we have time for 1 to 2 questions before we go for a short break. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the Q&A. Final call for questions. Okay, if there are none, we'll go for a short break.